Today we're discussing the worst NetherRealm game ever made, and when I say that, I don't mean the game wasn't fun, because the game honestly was fun. Also very annoying at times, but still fun, so when I call it the worst NetherRealm game, I'm simply referring to all the jank. NetherRealm tried a lot of new stuff with Injustice Gods Among Us, and a lot of it failed. The game was still enjoyable overall, but after hearing me list all the nonsense wrong with this game, I think you'll agree it's the worst game NetherRealm made. And since Injustice 3 is looking more likely every day, let's look back on the original Injustice game and how ridiculous it was. But first, it's sponsor time. Today's video is sponsored by Marvel Contest of Champions. I'm a huge Marvel fan, been reading comic books my entire life, and this game has nearly every character I can think of, from Daredevil to Deadpool and even Doctor Doom. And guess what? It's free to play and finally on PC. Developed by Kabam, Marvel Contest of Champions lets you assemble your team of iconic Marvel superheroes and villains to engage in epic high-stake battles. With over 280 characters, dynamic combat mechanics, and stellar graphics that can be fully experienced on PC. There's also a good number of modes too, like Alliance Quest and Alliance Wars, where you team up to take on challenges. Or there's solo challenges, special events, and limited time content based on Marvel's latest films, TV shows, and comic book events. In other words, this game is constantly adding new stuff for you to enjoy, whether it's characters, special events, and everything in between. Marvel Contest of Champions is coming to Steam, and it's time to hit wish list to unlock some awesome rewards for everyone when the game drops on Steam. The more people wishlist, the better the rewards for everyone. So go wishlist now using my link. It's time to experience why everybody is talking about this game. Try out Marvel Contest of Champions today. First up, we have the Interactables. Very ambitious, but also extremely broken. Later games would keep this mechanic, but reduce how nonsensical it all was. For anyone watching who never played these games, you can use the environment to attack your opponent, which sounds really neat on paper, because it makes the stages more than just eye candy. But the issue is how unbalanced they are. Just look at this clip on screen. That dumpster is unblockable when you throw it. So if your character has a lousy jump, then you can't avoid it. Plus, certain characters like Batman can force you into blocking their attacks, which guarantees the dumpster since you're stuck blocking. Moments like this are very common in Injustice, but perhaps the most infamous example is known as pig advantage. And I'm not making that up, trust me. It sounds goofy, I know. This was an official term used at tournaments, because there's a stage with a kitchen section, and if your character was near the hanging pig, then you held all the cards, since the pig could come flying their way at any moment. But after you threw the pig, now the opponent gained control over it, otherwise known as pig advantage. This one interactable on stage could be the difference between victory and defeat. So as you can see, the interactables in Injustice were more than just a fun mechanic. They could easily decide which player won the match. But another big issue with interactables was character bias. Unlike in Mortal Kombat games, characters in Injustice interact with the environment differently. Characters with super strength could throw certain items, while the weaker characters could only jump off it or sometimes detonate them with bombs. Or in other words, your character would dictate how many options you had on certain stages, which is terrible game balance in my opinion, because throwing the items was always better, especially if that object was unblockable when you tossed it. Just look at this short montage on screen. Only certain characters could do this, and it was very powerful, which led to the game being very unbalanced. And just like with the dumpster example I showed earlier, many characters could guarantee the unblockable landing, or at least make it very, very likely to land, especially against casual players that don't practice how to avoid the nonsense. Now thankfully, Injustice 2 removed most of the unblockables because they were so absurdly broken and unfair. So next up, let's talk about Keepaway. Most players would argue that Keepaway is the main problem with the Injustice series, and I mean both games. But Injustice 2 added more rushdown characters and also new mechanics to get around all the Keepaway. So the first game had worse Keepaway problems in my opinion. Tons of characters on the roster had way too many projectiles and other ranged attacks, which was already a bad idea, but then on top of that, the stages were huge, meaning your opponent could get really far away from you. Compare this image on screen to other fighting games and just look at the difference. You could get so much further away in the Injustice games, which obviously made Keepaway even more of a nightmare. Though I don't think NetherRealm did this on purpose, they likely gave these characters projectiles because they have those moves in the comics, and didn't realize that everyone would just default to Keepaway since, well, it's the easiest way to win matches at the casual level. You run away from the opponent and keep throwing stuff at them until they're dead. Pretty much anyone can do that. Plus the projectiles pass through each other, meaning that whoever had the life lead was likely to win the match. Oh, and also the high chip damage. You could easily die from blocking in this game, which is another big reason the zoning was so powerful. I'm told this game was tested by pro players, and that baffles me because this game is so absurdly unbalanced. It makes me wonder if pro players are just bad at balancing games or if they left it unbalanced on purpose. I honestly don't know, but this game is so wacky. Next up, let's talk about character traits. Every character in Injustice has a unique power-up button. For some characters, it's an attack. For others, it changes stances, sometimes it heals you, and so on. Every character had their own unique trait ability, which once again sounds really cool on paper, but it's balanced horribly. Some characters like Batman get tons of utility from their trait attack, while other characters like Cyborg basically have no trait at all, because it's that bad. And your character often fell on one side or the other. Do you have an amazing trait like Superman that increases your damage and breaks armor instantly? Or do you have a terrible trait like Harley Quinn that's completely random? Your fate was in NetherRealm's hands on that one, along with the pro players who apparently tested this game. Now thankfully, some characters were top tier without needing a good trait, and some characters with a terrible trait had it changed in the sequel to something better. A fantastic example is Cyborg. Instead of barely healing himself at a very slow rate, he now summons drones and Roombas of death. Alright, next up, let's talk about Crossups, or rather that NetherRealm had no clue how they work. In other 2D fighting games, if your opponent jumps behind you, even a little bit, then you have to block in the opposite direction, because most 2D fighting games don't have a block button. Instead, you hold back to block, or down plus back for low attacks, which sounds weird at first, but it's actually really good for movement, since you can walk backwards without having to fear oncoming attacks. And Injustice works like that too for the most part, except you can hold straight down to block low attacks instead of having to hold down and back at the same time, which is fine, but don't forget that we're talking about Crossups now. And in every other game, your opponent has to be behind you, as in most of their character has crossed the middle line. But for Injustice, only the attack itself had to be behind you. This attack right here, the game considers it a crossup, even though Green Arrow is in front of you. Yeah, that's not how it's supposed to work, because it makes everything super confusing, because your opponent is in front of you but still landing crossups somehow. But here's the funniest part, not only were crossups confusing to the player, but also for the game itself. That's right, you could actually trick the game into giving you crossups, even though your character was still in front. For example, this Superman attack in the corner, the game considers it a crossup, even though he's in front of you the entire time. But then Batgirl had the stupidest one. She could dash into you and then uppercut, which put her fist behind you just a tiny bit, and that made the game consider it a crossup. Once again, look at this image. Batgirl is completely in front of you, and yet Injustice says you got crossed up. Do you see how crazy this all gets? NetherRealm didn't realize how crossups are supposed to work, which led to all these goofy problems and insanely cheap setups. I feel really bad for any regular players that got hit by this nonsense, because they likely had zero clue what was happening. Their opponent's in front of them and they're blocking the right way but still getting hit by everything. As you can see, the Injustice game was extremely jank. Some of these problems exist in the sequel, but they were toned down a lot, so it didn't feel nearly as cheap and annoying. And like mentioned earlier, I liked this series and enjoyed the first game a lot, and I'm also looking forward to Injustice 3, which is likely being made right now. So yeah, I like the series, but even so, I think the first Injustice was the worst game NetherRealm has ever made. It's hilariously unbalanced and has way too much nonsense, and yet somehow we all still love it. Thanks for watching everyone, and I hope you enjoyed. I love making throwback videos like this, analyzing older fighting games, and according to my comment section, many of you watching also miss videos like this, so please leave a like if you enjoyed and want to see more content of this nature. And also feel free to comment any video ideas you have. Then finally, if you're new on this channel, make sure to finish that combo by subscribing and ringing that bell so you never miss any future videos. Make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdogs.